out of high school, especially with respect to the post-secondary learning experiences, is their average daily attendance in high school. It is just this overwhelming predictor. In Massachusetts, so I got all these kids' school records. I got records for about 30,000 kids. And I think you all have them here now. Okay? I talked to Robert Science about getting this data. So we get all the school records of kids. So remember, if you went to Catholic, so anybody go to Catholic school? Okay? Remember what the nuns told you, you're in trouble? This is going on your permanent record, right? Well, I have your permanent records. I know all. Okay? So in the permanent records, it's a string of data, right? It's just, it's about attendance, all these kind of things about you, right? So I have this for about 30,000 kids in Massachusetts, special ed status, all that stuff. And then I'm able to trace these kids into the post-secondary system through something called the National Student Clearinghouse. Don't get into the details, but it's a big database that tracks kids in the post-secondary system. And what we find is that the attendance variable and the actually in-school suspension variables, okay, are these just extraordinarily powerful determinants of whether or not a kid will persist in college. Okay, and that what we find is that these are actually more powerful than the kids' standardized test scores. Okay, that what it looks like is that for many kids, behavior trumps cognitive ability. That if you don't have these behaviors, the rest of it doesn't, sort of matter very much. We went out and we interviewed these employers, and we asked them, why don't you like hiring kids? Okay, the fundamental, the top reason, the most important reason was
they don't show up.
attendance. Exactly, it was the attendance just overwhelmed everything. Okay, and what that is and in economic theory, this is a signal, right? A college degree is a signal. It's a signal of your, if you get a degree from USC, that sort of means something. If you get a degree from community college, that sort of means something else, right? These are signals that people are sending. Well, one of the signals that kids send is depending on the high school they go to, the sending signals about attendance, right? And so when we ask employers, how do you think kids develop these attendance traits? Where do you think this comes from? Why are they unreliable relative to other sources of labor supply? The answer we get back is, we think it comes from schools. We think the schools don't manage for attendance. Because the schools don't manage for attendance, this is a classic quote I would get from the employers. They'd say, kid doesn't come in, so I discipline them, and then I get a look from, this is how they describe it, I get a look of bewilderment. They're bewildered by this, okay? They don't make a connection between discipline calling out and the act of calling out. There's no connection, and what their argument is because these kids, there was no ramification to poor behavior in high school. You didn't show up, no one cared. There's no impact on you. That when you go in the job market and all of a sudden there is an impact, you're surprised by this, hence the look of bewilderment. So that for a lot of kids, for a number of employers, and we need to explore this more carefully, but for a number of employers, what we're really seeing is that this fundamental attendance behavior is really important. If I said to I asked the employers, I said, if I could give you a kid's attendance record, would that change your mind? If their attendance record in high school, would that change your mind about hiring a kid? And they said, yes. Yeah, if you show me this kid shows up to school all the time, yeah, I hired a kid. Why? Because that signals attendance, right? I mean, it's no more clear than that.
So the students who are in school and are engaged in work, which is good, and I know that from experience, having been a secondary ed teacher, I would like to know about those students who are in school, not able to find work. Perhaps they become truant and eventually drop out of school, because these are the students we work with. How is it that we bring them back so that they're able to eventually graduate, get into the workforce? What suggestions do you have?
How would we recover dropouts?
Right.
Back in the school.
Because frequently they've never held a job.
Yeah. A couple of things. Part of the problem with the teen labor market now is it just has such a high fraction of kids who never have work. And this actually becomes this is a very bad signal. So remember I said employers they signal and they screen. This is a very bad signal to employers. When they see a kid 19, 20 years old, never had a payroll job. This is, in fact, there's a lot of evidence that employers, when they see people adults who are long-term unemployed, they really are not interested in hiring. So, trying to plug a kid back into the job market pretty quickly, would be important. Problem is, from an employer's point of view, this kid you just described to me looks awfully risky. So the question you got to answer is, how do I mitigate that risk with the employer? What am I gonna do to mitigate that risk? And I've seen a few things that I think have been sensible. One of the best programs I've ever seen is in this, little state of Vermont called progressive employment. And what they do with progressive employment is they take very risky people and they go to employers and they say, I want you to try this person out. And they'll only do this for 2 or 3 weeks. These are very entry-level jobs. And I will assume all the risk in this, okay? Workman's comp, liability insurance, everything comes to me, okay? I take it all, okay? This person chops their foot off, it's on me, not on your company, okay? So I assume all the risk. And in doing so, I do a couple of things. One, I take someone who's never been in a job and I kind of put them in a work setting so they begin to understand that. Second thing is that what the employers tell me out of this program is that after 2 or 3 weeks, that they say, in a week, I can't tell whether a person will be a good worker in terms of showing up, tardiness, and all this. But in 3 weeks, I can. Okay, I do. In 3 weeks, I'll know. They can't. They just don't have it in them if they're going to be not a great worker. They can't pull off 3 weeks. So what they do is they actually limit the duration of this program for 3 weeks. Worker doesn't get any pay at all. Okay, and they somehow get around this up in Vermont. I don't know. Yeah. But they get around it. Okay. And at the end of which, then they try and transition the person to a regular wage and salary job. And why do I say that? Why do I say that? Another way of doing this is through on-the-job training subsidies, OJT. Okay, might be a more reasonable way to do this. Where you go in and you say to the firm, I'm willing to mitigate this risk. This is a risky kid. I'm willing to mitigate some of this risk. Third way you do it is when you make a placement with the employee, and that's one of the reasons I like OJT, is you stay with the firm for an extended period of time. You just don't make a placement and walk away. One of the things, when I talk to them about programs, why they didn't like programs, okay, especially they hated summer jobs programs. Employers hate summer jobs. Hate them, okay? Why do they hate summer jobs programs? They hate them because this is what they tell me. They hire a teacher, they give them a stipend, the teacher then places the kid, and then the teacher goes away. So, and then I'm left without a record, okay? So, I'm, well, I know you don't. But this is a big pushback against employers. So being able to stay with the employer for an extended period of time, kind of resolve problems, disputes, issues that get raised. I've worked at 2 universities in my life, Northeastern University and Drexel University. Both of them are distinguished by the fact they run cooperative education programs. Why do those cooperative education programs work? Because they mitigate risk for employers. High school, again, top of my list, average daily attendance. Who's showing up? Okay, and getting the kid to show up in school and just managing for attendance. I've seen schools raise their attendance rates 10 points in a year. 10 points in a year, school-wide. How do they do it? The superintendent gets the attendance report every day. Okay, he goes through it kid by kid. Okay, I'm not talking about the principal, I'm talking about the superintendent. And he goes through it kid by kid and says, why is this kid out by 2 days? Who's called that home? Okay, they just manage this thing, and by managing it, they bolster their attendance rate. This is a career tech ed school that I'm talking about. This guy this is unbelievable. They got their attendance rate up to 98%. They had the highest attendance rate in Massachusetts. Career tech ed, okay? They were the top 10 scoring reading, writing, and math schools in the state. Okay, how'd they do that? They got the kids showing. Because at the end of the day, it's not you to get the kid the job. The only way that kid gets a job is the kid's got to sell themselves. That's it.
That play into, like now, it's like back in the day when I was looking for jobs, there was a human side of it. You get an interview, you go in, give your application. Now everything's on the internet. McDonald's, Walmart.
Yep.
And so you put in thousands of, applications, and that's another thing I don't think kids realize. That there's a strategy to do that as well.
Right, that's exactly right. And I think we need to kind of get kids thinking about how to respond to the new realities of the job market. I basically believe the labor market is a social institution, and these relationships are really important. But there are now these screening devices that just sort kids out very quickly, and kids don't understand what they're in. And working to kind of get kids to understand what those screening devices are, I think is really important, because I think a 60-year-old guy filling in that application at Home Depot is more sophisticated than a 60-year-old kid filling in that same application, going for the same job, as a cashier.